All right, Merry Christmas. I've got my little Santa hat on. I'm going to answer a couple questions. This one right here, I've had personal experience with my own kid. Okay, but then I have a lot of experience with it with regards to just my cases over the years. And I can tell you that if your child is eloping um, fairly consistently, and when I say fairly consistent, it could be once a month, that could be once a quarter. I don't really care. It shouldn't be happening. The norm in a school is that kids aren't eloping at all. All right, so that's where you got to start. No elopement, and then when you have one that's doing it, even once a quarter, that's multiple times a year. That's multiple times too many. So when it comes to that, I have a different, the perspective with regards to a school responsibility, um, where it puts your child in direct physical harm, but yet it hasn't happened yet. See, that's where the problem lies. Is that in the law there's not really a mechanism. Um, let's say they lose your kid. Let's say the police find your kid. Let's say your kid was wandering along a highway, and the police find your child, and the school had no idea that your child, could have been run over. But see, the word is could have been. Nothing happened to your child. Yes, they lost your child, but there was no injury to your child. So therefore, the law, when it comes to any kind of tort kind of situation, those become very hairy and complex to sit there and work out, because there was no quantifiable damage per se, because they lost your child. It's just that you were lucky and nothing happened to your child. Now, if something happened to your child to where your child unfortunately was injured or died, then yes, I mean, the school would be absolutely up that creek without a paddle, if you know what I'm saying. Um, but that's where you don't want to get. But then they don't have an answer for you. And I can tell you that, and I don't know where you live, but in every situation, it's a staff training issue. And I don't care if they have a one-to-one aide assigned to your child, but I can tell you right now, um, I don't know whether your child truly has a one-to-one aide, because if your child truly had a one-to-one aide, how the hell is your child eloping? And, if it's a situation of that the person assigned to your child is not physically able to catch up with your child, then the aide or the particular staff member um, does not fit the job description need for your child. Now, unfortunately, we live in a society now to where, what's a job description? I mean, we no longer really, because of um, political correctness and different areas where we are spinning into insanity world, um, some may think job descriptions to be archaic and mean and judging and shaming. And that's just not the case, guys. Either you can do a job or you can't do a job. But I've had those excuses thrown at me before, especially when I've had a student that required a what they call a deadlift, off of a wheelchair into a um, uh, let's say a bathroom. And the lady could be nice as all get out, but 95 pounds and 65 years old, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't take that big of a child with regards to weight, when they can't help support their weight and offset it. That's why they call it a deadlift. And if that's the case, guys, I mean, she just couldn't do the job. That doesn't mean she can't continue to work for the school system. It just means that you need to find somebody who would be able to meet the particular job description for my child who has individualized needs. And in this particular situation, and even for my child, my daughter, you know, she didn't, she, you, very deceiving. She didn't look that fast, but I swear she could have passed Jackie Joyner Kersey. I'm showing my age by you know, Flojo, for example, could have passed them when she got her wheels going. And there's been many times when, you know, I've had to hoof it to catch up with her when she was a lot younger. We don't have these elopement issues with her anymore, but she's 17 now. You know, she's not 4. She's not 5. She's not 7. And we had those issues all the time. But I can tell you that whoever was assigned to her needed to be and be able to meet the necessary job descriptions in order to keep my child safe. That was number one. Number two is, how was the IEP written to where my child truly had a one-to-one? Because sometimes they sit there and they craft the language to where it's listed as, let's say, adult support. My child would have access to adult support at all times. That doesn't necessarily mean that my child has a dedicated, committed one-to-one aide that is with my child throughout the school day. That's a much different parameter. So the schools tend to be very, very sneaky and creative with regards to how they describe aid support, so they don't have to pay for aid support, because it's a money issue, quite frankly. Okay? And then what they'll also do is they'll assign an aid, and you'll think that that's your child's aid, but then what they'll do is they'll overcommit your aid to 1, 2, 3 other kids, or during specific parts of the day, commit that aid to serve as, let's say, a teacher assistant in a class, and free float your child, because they go, oh, well, during this time we don't necessarily have a problem, until they have a problem. But, you know, the devil's in the detail of what that aid's schedule is throughout the day to ensure that it mirrors your child's. So in situations like that in IEP meetings, I always ask for my child's schedule broken down in 30-minute increments starting at the time my child arrives. What are they working on? Where are they located in the school? Who is assigned to them? And when they put it on paper, they're sort of committed to it. And, you know, if you find that there's a deviation there, then that's sort of where I always start to sit there and smoke these people out if they're being deceptive. Okay? If they're being creative in their financing of an aid and trying to overcommit the aid, then, you know, you always get the answers through clarification questions and follow-up questions. Okay? And a lot of parents aren't equipped, and you need to change that about yourself, guys. Follow-up questions, follow-up questions, follow-up questions. Follow-up questions. Okay, then, the other thing is the behavior plan. How is it written? What are the behavior goals? How are those written? How much staff training has been provided with regards to your child's maladaptive behaviors, including elopement? How is it written? Who is overseeing your child's behavior program? Because if they just design a behavior plan for your child and a crisis plan for your child, but they don't have anybody with an expertise in behavior, especially autistic behavior, that comes with, let's say, elopement or physical aggression or a lot of stemming or inability to pay attention or engage, then you know, those are complex behaviors that they don't teach in college, guys. And you can't read it out of a book. I mean, this is something to where this is why we have professions like board certified behavior analyst or licensed behavior analyst. They tend to have an expertise in this area. And I always find the ones, or try to locate the ones, that are ethical, that will follow their ethics, that will follow the science, because there is a science that goes along with this. And, you know, there's some parents out there like, I hate behavior analysts, you know, because of B.F. Skinner. Guys, we progressed so far past B.F. Skinner and, you know, the things that happened 30 years ago. It's a different world. You know, but I still have people rooted in the past as a measure for future behavior, and that's just absolutely unfair. But I see a lot of you doing that with history, period. That throw somebody out with the bathwater for, things in our society that happened, eons ago, when we lived in a completely different society, different mindset, different standards, different culture, different ethics. Isn't an excuse? No, but I didn't live back then. So it's sort of unfair for me with my 21st century mindset and my education and my understanding of people's rights and the further melting of our melting pot in this country to sit there and pass these judgments on people that sure as hell aren't here to defend themselves. Just unfair. So it's unfair for us to sit there and look at particular situations and go, well, I don't feel comfortable with that profession because of what? I'm just telling you that is the group that I believe has a solid foundation to understand and unravel complex behavior. And that is licensed behavior analyst, board certified behavior analyst. A lot of schools will sit there and they make up these titles, autism specialist or behavior specialist. I don't know what that means. And most of these are made up titles with some classes that went in there. The reason I like board certified behavior analysts or licensed behavior analysts because I know what their requirements are. They have a board. They have a set of ethics. They have a set of accountability attached to what it is that they do. So I can sit there and hold them accountable, whereas with a behavior specialist with a made-up title, how do you hold them accountable? How do you sit there and understand what the parameters of their ethics are and the standard practice of care or what science are they following? Because, a good behavior analyst will tell you exactly what science they're following. They can sit there and back it up. Most of them, and cite the research studies and everything attached to there. And the reason I bring them up is that when you're dealing with complex behaviors that over a year and a half they haven't been able to solve, then somebody needs to come in. Somebody needs to be a part of your child's IEP team to help guide in these particular areas, these complex areas. There must be training, and that training must be done to a standard of competency and fidelity to where, there's consistency in implementation in your child's program. It must be that way. So you can have the best behavior plan in the world, but if nobody is trained to that behavior plan, if people are not implementing it consistently and with fidelity, then it doesn't matter how good the plan is. And that's why you design a plan after a good functional behavior analysis to where we're able to understand the functions of these behaviors so that we can design a plan to help reduce the behavior, extinguish it and eliminating it by replacing it with good behavior or socially acceptable behavior or positive behaviors like not eloping, requesting where he wants to go, for example. So all of those things need to be coming in. All right, because just having a behavior plan by itself of preventing behavior, and by the way, punishing your child by taking away recess, that's not going to stop elopement because we don't understand why your child's eloping in the first place. So why is he eloping? So if they don't understand the functions of the behavior, what is the antecedent to the elopement? Do they even know that? Or are they just sitting there going, wow, he's not going to go outside for a week? Now, was that just making the adults feel better? And, because he's not understanding that and probably exacerbating the problem anytime, he has a free moment or access somewhere. So, these adults, when they make these stupid adult decisions that make themselves feel better because they were able to get their pound of flesh out of your child that just doesn't really care what any of them think because he keeps doing it. So, it just is so damaging what adults do, especially with kids that have some of these compulsive type behaviors like elopement or some of this stemming behavior. I don't get that. But see, I live in that world because I got a child that has these type of behaviors. And I can tell you, we pick our battles with her. And some of this stuff is just not that important to sit there and get emotional about. But I've had to learn that along with my wife through years and years and years of just living through it and just realizing that, we were bad parents in the beginning because we didn't know what we were doing. And, and I say that, but, I say that we weren't bad parents. I'm just saying retrospectively, it's amazing what experience does and provides that wisdom. And that's what I'm trying to provide here, is just our experience is you've got to get the right person in there with the right expertise on your team, on your IEP team. And that person needs to do a functional behavior analysis, a new one. We need to get to the bottom of why the elopement is occurring. We need to design a good behavior reduction and skill acquisition program, because a behavior plan by itself isn't going to work. We need to find a way to reduce and extinguish the behavior and replace it with a positive. And that is with everything. That's with all human behavior, quite frankly. But especially in your case. And no, we don't punish kids for things like that. That's insane. But you have to have it once we understand why the elopement is there. Okay? And we design a behavior reduction skill acquisition program. Then at that point, there's got to be training. Training according to what's called a competency checklist. A set of expectations for staff that they must meet in their training from the behavior analyst, for example. And that's why they call it a competency checklist. This is the expectations that we expect in order for us to sign off that you know what you're doing consistently and with fidelity on this child's plan. And it's not something that you teach in an after-school 30-minute or an hour session where everybody's on their smartphone and half-ass paying attention. No, the training must be hands-on. The training must be actually working with your son. It needs to be hands-on so they can model how they interact with your son according to the checklist expectations. And then stand back and watch the staff interacting with your child in the same way. And this person observes them in action. You do it that way, you have sufficient staff training, you have a good plan that works because everybody understands what the function of the behavior is, you're not going to have a problem in the future. Not with this. And then you'll attack the next behavior, whatever that is, in order to provide your child the necessary skills to become more independent and more independent and more independent and make progress. And we replicated that with my daughter from the ground level. We could not get her to stay seated for longer than 30 seconds. And that was the first goal. But we did it. Not we did it. Our very excellent behavior analyst did it. And this was when she was in preschool, just to get her seated for 30 seconds. You eat an elephant a bite at a time, guys. And it's amazing what you can accomplish with the right program and the right staff training and the right commitment. But to just sit there and half-ass throw a plan together and then have nobody trained on it, no, it's a recipe for disaster, but that's the norm in public education, unfortunately. We need a lot more training from people that have the competency, especially in the area of behavior.